Hello everyone, welcome back to Math Online. I'm Mrs. Solis, and on today's video, we will talk about adding and subtracting integers, day 1. So today's objective is, students will be able to add and subtract integers by using the addition rule. If you are ready for this, let's move on to the next slide.
All right, so now we have a number line. In this number line, we have different types of numbers, okay? So the first set of numbers that we're going to discuss today is the natural numbers. The natural numbers are all the positive numbers, starting with 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to infinity, okay? So if I'm referring to a natural number, it needs to start at 1, and it goes all the way to positive infinity, okay? It could be 100, it could be 101. But just keep in mind, it starts at 1, okay? Now, the whole numbers are literally the natural numbers, but we are including on this set the 0, okay? So the 0 is also included on the whole numbers. That's the only difference between natural numbers and whole numbers, okay? So now, finally, the integers. The integers is a combination of natural numbers, whole numbers, and negative numbers, okay? So now we're adding the negative numbers with the integers, okay? That's part of the data set. All right, so in order to remember this easily, just think about it like this. The integers include all the negative numbers and all the positive numbers and the 0. That's what you need to remember. So if you hear the word integers, your mind has to think, oh, positive numbers, all negative numbers, and the 0, okay? And when it comes to the rest, well, natural numbers is just the positive numbers. Whole numbers are just all the positives, including the 0. And integers includes negatives, positives, and the 0. Okay? So let's move on to the next slide. All right, so now we have the addition rule. The addition rule contains two different parts. The first part talks about the signs being the same. So if the signs of the numbers are the same, right, because we're talking about numbers here, so if the signs are the same, add the numbers and keep the sign. So in this particular scenario, you can see we have two numbers, negative 2 plus a negative 4. The 2 has a negative sign, the 4 has a negative sign, therefore they both have same signs, so you must do what? Add the numbers and keep the sign that you were given. So in this case, both of these numbers are negative, so you keep the negative sign, and you were out of the numbers. 2 plus 4 is 6, okay? So that's pretty much how it works. As long as the signs of the numbers are the same, all you have to do is add the numbers, keep the sign, okay? All right, moving on to part number 2. If the signs are different, on the other hand, if the signs of the numbers are different, then what we're going to do is subtract the numbers and keep the sign of the bigger number. So here's how it works, okay? So we're going to look at this scenario here. We have negative 2 plus 4. We can see that the 2 has a negative sign, the 4 has a positive sign. So we can clearly see that the signs of these numbers are different. Since the signs of the numbers are different, we must subtract them. And notice how in parentheses I put subtract. When you're subtracting, you'll take the big number minus the small number. So in this case, I will say 4, since that's the biggest number, 4 minus 2 is 2. And now we have to choose what sign to put. Well, what does the statement say? It says keep the sign of the bigger number. Well, which of these numbers is the biggest number-wise? The 4 is the biggest number-wise, right? So therefore, if the 4 is positive, my solution has to be positive. Okay? So that's how it works. So let's look at the next scenario here. We have positive 2. Even though it doesn't have a positive sign in front of the 2, it's still positive. Okay, guys, just keep that in mind. So 2 plus negative 4 equals negative 2. So here's the thing. The 2 is positive and the 4 is negative. So once again, the signs are different. So therefore, we must subtract the numbers. We will take the biggest number minus the smallest number. So which of these numbers is bigger? Number-wise, the 4 is bigger. Number-wise, okay? So 4 minus the 2 is 2. But which sign should we keep? Well, what does the statement say? It tells us, after you subtract, keep the sign of the bigger number. Which number of these two is bigger, number-wise, right? The 2 or the 4? The 4. So therefore, if the 4 is negative, our solution must be negative, okay? So that's how the addition rule works, okay? So we'll move on to the next slide. make sure that you take notes on this. This is super, super important. And make sure you study this, memorize the rules when it comes to the addition rule specifically, because if you don't know this by heart, you're going to be struggling, okay? So I'm telling you now, please memorize these two rules, or the addition rule, I should say, okay? All right, so here we go. Now, on the first scenario that we're going to do together, we have -1 plus 3. So here's the thing. We have -1 plus 3. So now, look at this, guys. Let me go back to my arrow here. This is a -1. This is a positive 3. The first question that you have to ask yourself is, are the signs the same? The 1 is negative. The 3 is positive. Are the signs the same? And everyone should be saying, they are different, right? So if the signs are different, we know that we must subtract the numbers. And the way we do that is by taking the bigger number minus the small one. So I'm just going to do it here as a reference. I'm going to say, I'm not even going to worry about the signs for now, okay? I'm going to say, since the signs are different, one's negative, one's positive, I'm going to subtract the numbers. The bigger number minus the smaller number. So that's going to give us 3 minus 1 is 2. But now, keep in mind what I said earlier. The portion number 2 of the addition rule tells us, since the signs were different, you subtracted the numbers, but you must keep the sign of the bigger number. So go back to the original problem and look at the numbers. Which number is bigger? Clearly 3 is bigger, number-wise, right? So the 3 is bigger and it's positive, therefore my solution should be positive. So that's how that works, okay? So my solution should be positive, therefore my solution is 2. Therefore, out of these options, A, B, C, and D, my answer should be C, okay? So that's how it works, so keep that in mind. All right, with that said, let's move on to the next slide. All right, so in this next scenario, we have a different scenario here. We got -6 plus a -3. So the first question you must ask yourself once again, are the signs the same or are the signs different? Depending on what the answer to those questions is, you'll have to do a specific strategy, right? So here we go. So number 6 has a negative sign. Number 3 has a negative sign, as you can see. Now notice this plus sign. This plus sign here is just an operation. It's working as an operation. What operation are we doing? Addition. That's what we're doing, okay? There's 4 different types of operations: subtraction, multiplication, division, and addition. Right now we have addition. So what I'm concerned is the signs in front of the numbers, right? So 6 is negative, 3 is negative, therefore the signs are the same, right, class? So if the signs are the same, the addition rule tells us that we must add the numbers, right? So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to say, okay, well, -6 plus a -3 is equal. So since the signs of the numbers is the same, I'm going to add the numbers. So 6 plus 3 should give us 9. Now, it also tells us that if the signs are the same, we add the numbers, well, we must keep the sign that we were given. Both of these numbers are negative, therefore we are keeping our solution negative, okay? So there it is, boom. So therefore our solution on the option menu should be A. Okay, so there it is. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. All right, so in this case, we have example number 1, and notice how example number 1 is in red, right? You guys see that? Example number 1 is in red. The word example and the number 1 is in red. Why is it in red? Well, Amber Alert, right? So this is a special case, okay? So here's a little trick, and I want you to write this down. Every time you see 2 negative signs together, right next to each other, you're going to switch them to positive signs. So as we can see, I'm going to rewrite this problem down. So I'm going to go down to blue here. I'm going to say, okay, we got -4 minus -7. I'm not going to write the parentheses anymore. You don't have to write the parentheses, but it just makes it neat, right? But you don't have to. So -4 minus a -7, that's our problem. But I notice that there's 2 negative signs right next to each other. You guys see that? Right here. So therefore, I need to go ahead and make them positive. That's the special case. Every time you have 2 negatives together, make them positives, okay? So now we can rewrite our problem and say, okay, well, I could rewrite this as -4 plus +7, or you could just leave it as 7, okay? So now you ask yourself, the 4 is a negative number. The 7 is a positive number, right? Because you got to look at the signs in front of the numbers. So 4 is negative, 7 is positive. Therefore, both of these two signs are different. So what does that tell us? If the signs are different. If the signs are different, we must subtract the numbers. So we'll say a bigger number, side note, 7 minus a smaller number equals 3, right? Okay, so the answer here should be 3, but remember, let's recall. There's another part of the statement that says, if the signs are different, subtract the numbers, which we did, and keep the sign of the bigger number. So which number is bigger, the 4 or the 7? Number-wise, the 4 or the 7? The 7 is bigger, right? So the 7 is positive, so therefore our solution should be positive. Boom, and there is your solution. So the lesson here learned on this example is that if you have two negatives, just make them into positives, okay? Two negative signs together, make them into positives. All right, with that said, let's move on to the next slide. All right, now we have example number 2. Now, example number 2 is a little bit easier. Hopefully, you guys find it easier and are able to see how to work this out, okay? So here we go. Example number 2. I'm going to rewrite the scenario here. I actually love writing the questions. So, -3 minus 7, okay? That's what you have here. I'm going to look up this number and keep in mind the addition rule, okay, guys? The 3 is negative. The 7 is negative also, right? So, if the signs are the same, what do we do with these numbers? Do we add them? Do we subtract them? If the signs are the same, we add the numbers, right, guys? Okay, good. So, since the numbers have the same sign, we're going to go ahead and add these numbers. So 7 plus 3 is 10. But remember what the addition rule says. If the signs are the same, add the numbers, which we did. And you must keep the sign that you were given. They give us a negative, they give us a negative. Therefore, this solution must be negative. Okay. There's your solution. All right. Without further ado, let's move on to the next slide. All right, so this is the point where you will be trying these problems. So at your own pace, if you're watching this at home, make sure to pause the video and try it out first, and then unpause the video so you can see what the answer is, okay? So give some time. So give yourself some time to try it out. Give it a try. If you get it wrong, no big deal. Like I said, we'll make a few mistakes here and there, but we'll learn these rules, okay, and master this concept. So here we go. Which is equivalent to -12 minus a -3. Now, notice this question is not asking you for a specific value or to simplify it, right? It's just saying, hey, which of these expressions is equivalent, the same as the one that we gave you right here, right? So, therefore, you just have to keep in mind what the addition rule tells you and the special case. Now, before we do anything with the numbers and look at the signs being the same or different, let's look at the special case. Do we have two negatives right next to each other? Can anybody see that? Hopefully you guys can see that, but if I was to rewrite this without parentheses, it's more clear. We have a -12 minus a -3. And I'm going to write this scenario without the parentheses, okay, so you can see it better. Now we can see that we have two negative signs right next to each other. That is an issue. So what do? We turn them into positive signs. So now this expression says, you can actually rewrite it or not, but it will be the same answer. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it so you can see it better. -12 plus a +3. So I don't have to write this positive sign again because I know that this number must be positive. Okay. So now I'm going to check and say, well, we can actually simplify this further, but that's not the question here, right? It's just which expression is equivalent to one of these options. Okay. If you go ahead and win and simplify it, that's awesome. If you did simplify it, just as a reference, if you did simplify it, you should get -9. Why -9? Because since the signs are different, negative, positive are different, you subtract the numbers, bigger minus a smaller one, which is 9, and you keep the sign of the bigger number. Which number is bigger, the 3 or the 12? 12. So therefore, you keep the negative sign. Okay. But like I said, that's not what the question is saying. The question is saying, hey, which is equivalent? Which of these expressions is equivalent, the same to this one? So as you can see, this is the final expression that we get, right? which one is equivalent to the one that we came up with? A, B, C, or D, once we simplify this, right? I believe B would be the correct answer, right? B matches the one that we have. You see that? Once you apply the special rule about two negatives being the same, two negatives being right next to each other, turning them into positives, you see that our expression simplifies to option B. Okay? Awesome. All right. So let's move on to the next scenario. All right. So in this case, we have a 7 minus a negative 2. So I would recommend pause the video and try this example on your own. We'll give you a few minutes in class to work on this, and then we'll go over it. Okay? All right, so here we go then. So let's check this out. So this one, we have 7 minus a negative 2. I'm rewriting this without parentheses, and hopefully you guys were able to observe that there's two negatives next to each other, so those can be converted into positive signs. Okay, that'll make our life easier. Now, I can actually rewrite this again. You don't have to, but it makes it a lot neater. 7 plus a positive 2. We don't need the positive sign no more because the number is still positive. So 7 plus 2 will give us 9. So our solution in this case should have been option B. Awesome. All right, well, that's it for today. If you guys have any questions, make sure to send me an email. Remember to memorize those 2 parts on the addition rule, those 2 things we talked about. Because if you don't remember those things, you're going to be struggling, okay? So you got to memorize the rules, okay? So hopefully this video was helpful. And if you did enjoy the video, remember to drop me a thumbs up. And remember to subscribe to the channel for more videos. And remember, we teach a new lesson like this one almost every single day. I'm Mr. Solis, and I'll see you on the next one.